So, good evening, you guys. It's revealed that Darby Allin a few hours ago has arrived at the Mount Everest summit. And, I really want to say, first of all, congratulations to Darby Allin. Like, he had a lifelong goal and he was able to achieve it. And also, too, that yes, he did have a bunch of training. So, he did this, safely as possible. And, we all got one life to live. So, there are goals that we need to that we dream of and then we accomplish. I visited all 50 states, and I've also got my passport. It took me a very, very long time because I was adopted. I was born on a military base, and I had to get in touch with my biological father. And yeah, I'm sorry guys, but I had to get in touch with my biological father to do it. And it was also very hard because I was adopted out of an abusive situation. So, my biological father has a story. The court paper has a story. My adopted, parents have a story. So it's very hurtful and painful, but I was able to get my passport. I went to Halifax. Then I'm going to go to AEW in the UK. Then we go to AEW in Mexico City. My American dream is to go to Japan, and that's probably going to happen, either this year or next year. So when we accomplish like these triumphant goals, it's definitely inspiring, but it's also something that it does the soul very, very well, really. And sometimes, there are people who have really impossible goals and they choose to accomplish them or they can't accomplish them because of certain situations, or sometimes they're not motivated to. So when you see somebody accomplish something, it is commendable. But there is some controversy around it because there are a lot of people who are talking about, hey, because he chose to climb Mount Everest, we all had to wait. We're all dealing with the Death Rider storyline because that's technically was created because Darby Allin was climbing Mount Everest, and ultimately they may just hold off the story. They may keep the story running until he comes back to television. So I thought about this a little bit. That I think first of all, I would say that honestly, holding on Darby Allin is a bad idea if they draw it out, for a few more months. And what I mean by this is that if you do something like say, hey, Darby Allin's going to come back at AEW Wrestle Dream a year later, and it's going to be Moxley versus Darby, or if you do something like say, well, World's End, really, I think that that's way too long of a wait. I think the most appropriate thing you can do is one of two things. You can wait until AEW All In and do a triple threat, but I think that's a bad option. I think what you need to do is have Darby Allin be entered into the Casino Battle Royale, where he gets a title shot against the champion anytime and anywhere. And I think what I would do if I was booking is have Darby Allin come back, and then you have Moxley versus Will Ospreay, and then Will Ospreay beats Moxley, and then you set up at Forbidden Door, it's Darby Allin versus Will Ospreay. And the reason why you have to do this is because a lot of people love Will Ospreay. And he's kind of like the John Cena of AEW. Like, he's kind of like the wrestler that everybody really likes, and he kind of fits the AEW, like, tour de force, type of style, really. So I really think that you have to have him win the title at All In. That is the best option. That's gonna, that's probably the most marketable option. And then if you do Darby versus Will Ospreay at AEW, at the O2 Center, you could do something like have Darby win, and then you can kind of do like one more match between the two at All Out, where it's like 2 out of 3 falls type of match, or a steel cage match or something like that, and that would be the end of the feud, really, if you want to kind of wrap it up quickly. Because I think that one of the big problems is, like, as people said, you don't want to draw out the Death Riders any more longer. You don't want to say, hey, it's some epiphany for Darby Allin, so we're going to wait more and more months for it. That's not good. I just think, like, just really giving to Ospreay right now is the best option, or even Hangman Adam Page, one of those two. But I think that Ospreay, right now is the most marketable option, even though like the better story is um Hangman versus Moxley. That's the better option. Or one third option that you can do is that you can have Osprey versus versus Moxley, or Adam Page versus Moxley, and then Eddie Kingston screws over John Moxley, and then you have John Moxley versus Eddie Kingston for the remainder of the year, and then they have like a bloody hardcore match or a lights out match at AEW. That'd be the way to do it. You know, so there's a bunch of different options that they can do to to make sure that, if they want to transition to Darby Allin, they can have other exciting things to make it happen. But I also think that the other thing that I will say is that yes, there is a lot of good publicity on AEW for um, Darby Allin accomplishing this feat. Yes, there is, but the other problem is that it's more detrimental to AEW than anything else, because with the Death Riders, they went down possibly around like 30% in viewership. That even in pay-per-views now they're struggling to have the renowned AEW pay-per-views, because they've been sticking with Moxley, and Moxley's not been a good champion. He makes no sense when he talks. They really had no plan for him. The Death Riders thing is not working, and they're sticking with it. And every pay per view he's not doing good because he moves around too slowly. It's the same repetitive ending, and he's not had the right opponents for him. You had Adam Copeland, a guy in his 50s. You also had Orange Cassidy, Mr. Comedy Kicks. You had that bad Fatal 4-Way. And you had Powerhouse Hobbs, which was a great option, but you didn't want to switch the title. You had Samoa Joe, but you didn't want to switch the title. You had Swerve Strickland, but you didn't want to switch the title, really. So it seems like they always, like just holding off on Darby Allin until he gets like a pay-per-view and all that stuff. That's not good, really. And then also you have to think about with All In, that's your WrestleMania for AEW. So they have to be like, when it's time for people when it's time to move on, when it's the right moment, when it's the most marketable moment, that's when you switch. And if you want people to remember AEW positively this year, All In is the best time for Moxley to drop the title. No, you cannot do something like have Ospreay and Hangman get injured, and then you have injure the Death Riders as Darby Allin to save the day. I think that people wouldn't like that. I think that the best option is Ospreay, and then just get to Ospreay and Darby Allin at Forbidden Door. Set up the story that Ospreay lost to Darby Allin, and this is like a rematch. That would be the best thing to do. So I think that as I'm saying that, congratulations to Darby Allin. He's doing an excellent job climbing Mount Everest. He really accomplished his goals. But I think that to marry him back into AEW, they have to think about how to they need to think about how to bring him back, really. And I think like the worst thing that they can do is say Darby Allin's coming back, but we're gonna wait until Wrestle Dream or World's End. We're gonna keep the Death Ride thing a little bit longer just to really slow burn this, when I don't think that's a good option. I think my option is best. If you really want Darby Allin to come back, the best thing that he can do is enter the casino battle royale that they have at AEW, All In, and then that should be the first winner of that. You don't want a Christian Cage moment where somebody holds that thing and then they don't cash it in, really. So that would be the option. Would be what I would recommend. And then you could even do something like give Darby Allin the title and then make Ospreay heel, or you can do something where he loses and where Darby Allin loses and he has to get it at World's End, or you can do something where he beats Will Ospreay and then they have like a rubber match at AEW All Out, and then you give the title back to Ospreay, or something like that. They can kind of like have like a rivalry of who's better, because they keep exchanging the titles with each other. So I think that the big thing is that Darby Allin does deserve the title. He does deserve to come back and win something, but it's really just how they and the Death Rider thing, and it's really just how they choose to incorporate him back, really, and ultimately not delay things for such a long time. Really, like the Death Rider thing, it really needs to end. Um, I think All In is the best time to end it, and I also think they have to understand that, if you say something like, "No, we wanted to keep it on Darby, we're going to keep the John Mox as champion through Forbidden Door," that's a really bad option because it really needs to end. And they really think about marketability. And even though like Forbidden Door has a lot of good sales, you don't want to just you want to have more good sales. It's not completely sold out, but also too you want to have trust. You don't want to like go to Britain and be like to the UK and be like, hey, we have a champion that nobody really likes, and because then what's going to happen when they go to Wembley Stadium next year, and people are like, oh, well, look at that AEW. They keep just making shows that people don't like. They keep doing what the hell they want to do. So, there's definitely, really a lot for AEW to think about, So I really just hope that, I really just hope that when they bring back Darby, they make some really, really smart choices with how to utilize him. And they just don't be like, okay, you know what, the best way to utilize you is to draw you out and then eventually give him and then eventually drop the title. It really needs to wrap up this John Moxley and everything thing has to wrap up soon, and then you have to like put in Darby in the right way. And I also will say the last thing is that Ospreay and Hangman both deserve the world title, so you have to set an example to the locker room that yes, it's cool that Darby was out, and it took him roughly 7 months to do this. But you have to set an example that you don't go on vacation for 7 months, then you come back and you gain the title. Really, like that just sets a bad example. So he has to kind of like grind a little bit and maybe have a bit of a story, have a bit of a feud. Maybe have it with Kyle Fletcher or somebody like that, and then get to the title again. So yeah, like I said, it's gonna be really how they book Darby Allin and take care of that, really. Congratulations, Darby Allin, but he really has to be incorporated back into AEW, correctly, but in a way that doesn't feel like he's privileged, and he just gets it. So that's all I gotta say.